Fire Radio.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Size Up by National Fire Radio, where what you do off the job matters. And I'm super excited to have my guest on today because I've been following her page for a while. Didn't really know she was the person behind the page, I guess. So maybe, like in typical fireman type form, I don't pay attention to everything I see and I don't always read everything. And it's kind of cool because this is maybe only the first or second time I think I've actually interviewed someone that Jeremy has already interviewed on the National Fire Radio platform. And we talked about this, it's crazy. The idea of the Size Up was so long ago, and how it's developed. But Jay and I talked about, like, what if we both interview the same person at different times? And it was a weird conversation. And part of it was like, well, dude, you talk about different things than I do. We have different styles of interviewing, I think. At least that's what people tell us. And who cares? Like, it just gives that guest a little more exposure to them and a different style of talking. So I'm super stoked to have Jennifer from FD. It's FD _explorers and beyond on Instagram, right? Is the page?
It's FD _beyond explorers. Because and you have to do those kind of things on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, because there's a million different, like, you have to change it because there's always somebody who has your name that you want, because the name of our group is Beyond Explorers. So, but that was already taken, so we had to do it that way.
I just hate that, like, my little bit of dyslexia came out there and I reversed it. Because, like, I even wrote it today. Like, I feel like I copied it off what you sent me, or I was looking at it online and I still wrote it backwards, but it really doesn't matter. But you are right. And I guess, hey, we could just jump right into little social media-ness in the beginning, where you have to do those underscore things now. And it was so cool way back when I got to start 555 on Instagram. There were no such things as underscores because it was Instagram with new, 12, 13 years ago or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So is there another, like, Beyond Explorers page out there, or?
There's like, there's like 20, I think, different variations. And I had to even add, I don't think I could, it's been a while since I started it, but, I think when I was trying to do it, I don't even think I could get just any kind of variation of Beyond Explorers. That's why I had to add the FD, was because I think there's, police use explorers, that term too. And so there was already, every variation of that was already taken. So I had to add the FD in order to, because you have to be like the uniqueness or whatever. And then even adding the FD wasn't enough. So then I'd add the underscore and go from there. It was
I guess, though, like, in thinking about it too, like, regular, just let's call them explorers out there probably are pretty big on social media as well, between urban explorers and spelunking explorers and whatever other kind of explorers you could think of. But it was crazy. I didn't really know much about explorer programs until I got more involved with 555 and branched out, because it's not necessarily a big New Jersey thing, or maybe even a big East Coast thing. I'm guessing you probably know definitely way more than me about it, but is it more of like a Western side of the United States thing?
So I went to high school. I grew up kind of a little bit in New Jersey. I grew up in Teaneck.
Oh, okay. We know some people in Teaneck. I don't know if Jay said that, but there's a guy listening to the podcast, editing it, who knows a lot about Teaneck, so.
That was what kind of connected us, was because he's kind of from a similar area. And when I first became an EMT, I worked for an ambulance company in Hackensack. So I think it's not a big East Coast thing, and this is just an opinion. So, like,
it's okay. Listen, regardless of what you say, someone's going to be like, "No, she's totally wrong." It doesn't. You can say whatever you want. So, just your opinion. We're not representing anyone. It's just a thought out there in the space.
This is just my observation. I think the reason that East Coast doesn't have it as much is because there's more of a presence of volunteer fire departments. The majority of cities and townships, I think it's just the way the East Coast is structured, especially in New Jersey. There's a ton of townships and little, like, kind of really small. What's that?
A hamlet. I live in a hamlet type of place.
Yeah, and so they don't have yeah, they don't have maybe a paid department. They have a volunteer department. So people have more of an ability to become a volunteer and learn as you go and all that stuff. Whereas on the West Coast, you don't see that as much because, you know, as America expanded west, they kind of, you know, got more of an idea, oh, this has to be a city and all that stuff. And so then there's more paid fire departments because it's actual cities. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in the West Coast, but it's definitely more prevalent out west because there's not that core volunteer department really close to you. Like, you know, I mean, when you're on the East Coast, if you blink, you can go from town to town. Where the West Coast kind of isn't like that. It's like big sprawling cities and stuff like that. And so they need to have a way to kind of train young people, get young people involved. Whereas I think if you're in New York, New Jersey, you'll just join a volunteer department and be like, oh, I wonder if I like this or not. And you'll learn all this stuff that you're supposed to learn. And so with that, Beyond Explorers, so our Explorer program in the Las Vegas Valley, not just for our fire department, which is Clark County Fire Department, since it's kind of run by the Boy Scouts, they have to, you can only be 16 to 21 when you join.
Okay.
And so if you're past the age of 21, you can't join the Explorers. And that's like an insurance kind of thing because the Boy Scouts covers the Explorers for that time. And so the Boy Scouts, like, so it's weird because if you join before you're 21, you can stay as long as you want. And the Boy Scouts will still cover you. But if you want to join, like, let's say you're 22, you can't join Explorers. But, like, let's say you figure out you want to be a firefighter at 25. There's really kind of no avenues for you to go through in order to, you know, get those skills and, you know, learn what it actually is before spending all that time. And so that's what we created for Beyond Explorers.
And is that so again, this is like beyond fascinating to me that you're now attached to the Boy Scouts and just for the insurance purpose, which is genius in a way, like to say like, hey, these guys have something. Is that like the common Explorer organizational tree, let's say, that they're attached to the Boy Scouts organization, or is that just specifically for where you are?
Yeah, no, I think it is pretty common because I think the idea is that the Boy Scouts want to give well, now the Boy Scouts has changed, but they want to give young people. Initially, they want to give young men areas to go into as far as career shaping and all that stuff. And if they didn't want to go into ROTC or something like that, that's why the Boy Scouts supports fire, police, explorer type programs to kind of help young men proceed and get a career and all that stuff. But now I think it's called Scouts, right? Like, and so they take everybody, I guess.
There's all kinds of difference. Anybody can join, and which isn't a bad thing at all. But again, it's just it's interesting to hear that too, and even to go back to your East Coast side of like, you know, because I started as a volunteer EMT. And I never really compared explorers to, I don't know if we were called cadets or junior members. And I know you see that in the fire departments, in the volunteer fire departments here in New Jersey. But what we are seeing a lot of, I feel more this year, especially on social media, is more like summer programs for kids with the local police departments and fire departments running like a week-long summer camp, like an emergency services summer camp to kind of give them that, what you're talking about, that little glimpse into what the job is.
Yeah, and it keeps young people, I think, like, you know, the goal of those kind of groups like Boy Scouts or Scouts or whatever, their goal is to keep young people out of trouble. Because if you give them something to do, then they're not, you know, during the summer, during weekends, they're not, you know, out like raising, you know, like getting into trouble.
Things, let's just say.
Yeah. And so I think that's kind of the idea. And then it's like, oh, we'll give them a career path too, because, you know, like I always say with our fire department, or any organization, and once again, I'm generalizing, but for the most part, I think when people pick a career path, it's because they either have some kind of relative or a close friend, or they have some kind of attachment to that career path. But there's some people who are out there who don't have any mentorship. They don't have any people to look up to that have any type of career or whatever. And so they don't even look at firefighting, police, any of those things as an option, because how would they know? Nobody in their immediate area does that. They've never known anybody that does that. They don't even, it's not that they don't want to do it. It's just that they didn't even think it was an option for them.
Sure.
And that was for me. That was for me too. I didn't think it was an option. So I'm 47 right now. So that meant like back in the 90s, I was graduating high school and all that stuff. And even back then, it just shows how far we've come even in the last 25 years. I didn't even know women could be firefighters. I didn't know that was an option. I never saw it. I never thought about it. I didn't know nobody in my family did it. That wasn't like something, that you did. So, I went to college, and I went to Michigan State, and I was going to be a veterinarian. And then a lot of stuff happened with trying to pay for school and do all that stuff. So eventually I came home and I was waiting tables, and I was watching TV, in the middle of the day. And middle of the day TV, they know their audience. So they're kind of like, okay, if you're at home during the middle of the day, that probably means you are looking for a job. So the news did this special on lucrative careers that you can have without having a bachelor's degree. And one of them was paramedic. And so I was like, the news special went off. I immediately picked up the phone. I had to use the Yellow Pages because there was no Google back then.
Kids listening, the Yellow Pages is a really big book that had all the numbers in it you needed.
Yeah, it's this big book. Huge. And then you had to call an operator sometimes if it wasn't in there, and then you had to it was a whole thing. So I went to the Yellow Pages, and I immediately tried to find out, okay, well, how do I become a paramedic? And they said, well, you have to become a basic first, and then you can apply for paramedic school and all this. And so my goal was, I'm going to go to paramedic school, and then I'm going to use that money to then pay my way through college. And so I'll never forget it. I went to basic school. It was at a community center, and it was $50. And it was 2 nights a week at the community center. And I became a basic, and then that was when I started working at this place called Arrow Ambulance, which I'm not even sure if it's still there, but it was in Hackensack. And we did a lot of wheelchair coaches and all that stuff. So it's I've done the grunt work.
At some point, you had to realize, my checks are not going to pay for college this way.
Back then we were pretty well paid as basics, but I knew I had to become a medic. Our starting pay was $11.50 an hour, and you got to remember this is 1996, so that was okay.
Listen, I started in career EMS in Jersey in '98. And I think it was $10.70 an hour or something like that. So, I mean, we went up pretty rapidly after that.
Yeah.
But again, it was this is still not a lot of money.
No, it's not sustained. You're like, okay, this is not going to be my career for life. This is a means to an end. I've always been looking at okay, what's next? I'm that kind of person anyway. So I want to say I worked for 8 or 9 months, and then I started paramedic school in the fall in Michigan. Because I was going to Michigan State, so I thought, I'm going to go to Michigan, and while this was the plan, right?
Bad idea.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'll establish residency in that year of paramedic
at the time. And still in New Jersey, there are not many paramedic programs. It's not easy to become in New Jersey. There's I'm going to be wrong, and then someone's going to yell at me. There are a handful of paramedic programs in New Jersey, and they only accept a certain amount of students a year.
Wow!
I mean, the numbers are. I became a medic in you could see now, no, 2012, and I'm 3707, and I think they're like at like 4,400 now or something. So there's really not a lot of people coming out of medic school in New Jersey
Oh
at the
man.
rate of other states, let's say.
Huh. Is that because I think because New Jersey, the way they do, they don't need a lot of medics, maybe because the hospitals are, I don't know, like because
You're
there's
right.
not
So
transport
for the
time.
yeah, so we're still the same as we were when you left, where you have to be a hospital-based paramedic. So fire
Yes.
departments don't run, even though fire departments do run EMS on a BLS level. You cannot be a paramedic and work for a fire department. You have to be a paramedic and
Right.
work for one of the hospital-based programs, and that's a whole different story and things like that. Let's say.
Okay, so it's like they have like one paramedic per like 100 miles or something like
One
that.
truck
That's what
with
it
two.
felt
So
like.
we have two paramedics on a truck. There
Right.
was some talk of switching that, but two paramedics on a rig, and then how they are divvied out is a whole different story for a podcast for another day.
Yeah.
But it's still the two-tier system. So you call and you'll get a BLS ambulance and then a paramedic unit. Whether
Right.
it's a transport unit or not depends on where you are in New Jersey. But there's not a lot of paramedic units in New Jersey. We could definitely
Holy
use a
cow,
few.
that is crazy because that we're talking 30 years ago. That is exactly how we did it. When I worked in the ambulance and I was a basic, if we needed a medic, we called them. They came from the hospital. It was two of them. They showed up, but they didn't have transport capabilities. They would get in with us.
Yeah, we're still there.
That is so
And
crazy.
it's interesting too. So now people are going to yell at me, but whatever. There was a time where they were going to transport like ambulances, so they were putting the medics in ambulances. So then, hey, free up the BLS truck, go. And a lot of the projects we're finding though, the ambulance costs way more than the truck. So to put
Oh,
an SUV on the road or a pickup truck with a cab on the back of it, it allows you to save money from buying the ambulance, save wear and tear on
right.
the ambulance. So they kind of went back to that system. So it depends where
Wow.
you are in Jersey, and it's interesting. Jersey's an interesting place. I don't have to tell you that, but
That is so funny. I can't believe that they're still. Well, I mean, I guess look, if it's working, keep going. So
well, no one knows. Again, is it working? Is it not? Sure, people are getting help, and there's paramedics going out. Are there maybe better ways to do it? Sure, it's like you went back before. And even like I said, in New Jersey, we do have a lot of volunteer departments. And a difference with the Explorer programs out west is they're really preparing folks for careers in the emergency services. You know, like you're getting a leg up being an Explorer with your program to get
hmm
into your department because it's attached to it. Where when you have a volunteer department, I know when I was a volunteer, I can probably name 10 people right now that were volunteers around my age 20 something years ago that are now involved in career departments somewhere else. But that wasn't
hmm
the mission of the volunteer department. The mission of the volunteer department was become a firefighter, respond in our department, and help this community out. Not, hey, we're going to get you a job somewhere else. Just all kind of found that on our path on our own.
Yeah, and that's just a really big like cultural difference that we have from coast to coast. And I think, I mean, you could probably once again spend 10 hours examining why that is, and it's
Sure.
probably like building construct, like just culture, everything that plays into the fact of why that is, and why firefighting is looked at more of a career kind of thing out here than it is. And maybe that's why I never thought of it as a career when I was living there, because I was brought up by, two people who were from New York. So, they just, that's not a career path. Doctor, lawyer, those are, career paths. So,
It's
yeah, that's
interesting
so
too, like
funny.
recruitment. People talk all the time, recruitment, retention. You see it all over the place online and things. And
hmm
it's like, how do you make this job more accessible to more people? Because again, I was fortunate. My father was a firefighter. I knew exactly what everything was, just like so many
hmm
of the people I work with had a family member. But I also have a lot of people I work with that, I mean, one of the guys on my shift literally saw the sign, like saw the recruitment sign, walked into our firehouse. I'm like, I don't know if it's the last day you could apply or like the day before, and was like, oh, let me submit an application, and did it and got hired in the first group. You know what I mean? Like, was
Oh
like
man,
no clue what being a firefighter was about. Was just like, that looks like a good job. Like,
that is so crazy. And that like represents even out here such a small percentage of people that we hire.
yep.
We always say there's three ways to get hired on our fire department. One, you know someone, 2, you're a paramedic, or three is you go to the same church. So that's a lot out here. So we always say that, and it is pretty true. And I would say the majority of people that I work with, and there's the majority of people that I know in life, when you ask them, hey, what do you do for a living? And they tell you, and then you ask them, what did your parents do? It's almost always very similar.
Yeah.
Most people don't go outside of that, because you're going to do what you know. Like you were saying, like you got into firefighting because that's what your dad did. And that's what you saw, and it looked cool and whatever. And so that guy that walked in off of like seeing a sign, he's an anomaly. We have him too, but it just isn't as much as you would want. And so right now in everything, you're seeing this big push for diversity. Like, why is it? And I think in this day and age, maybe 40 years ago, there was people being like kind of kept out of certain things. But I think in this day and age, it's just because people kind of don't know about stuff. And I think it's just exposure. It's getting out there. And that's why social media is important, because you can reach an audience that might not know about it. And so this is funny. I was just one of the people that we mentored that was in our group just graduated from Fire Academy. And while I was sitting in the audience, one of the other mentor groups came up, or no, it was somebody else from the audience. And they were like, oh, are you part of, such and such a group? And I said, yes. And then they said, who do you target when you're looking for? And I understand the question.
Sure.
And I said, we target people that want to be firefighters and don't know anything about the fire service.
People with pulses and they breathe. That's who I target. What? Like, if you have a pulse and you breathe, I'm targeting you because you may want to be a firefighter. Come talk to me. And I'll tell you all about it. Like, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah. And my theory is, if you cast a really wide net, you will get diversity that way.
Sure.
I think when you overdo it and look for one type of person, you're not going to get quality people. I think you'll get diversity if you just cast a broad net. If you just say, okay, hey, we're looking for people who want to do this. And now we're going to reach other types of audiences who don't even know about this job profession, and then let them come to us. If you start targeting people, you're going to get people that don't really want to be there. And I don't think anybody wants to be in the fire service and be next to somebody who really doesn't want to be there. And there's people of every kind of culture, size, gender, whatever, there's that want to do this job and are capable of doing this job. So if you just cast a broad net, you're going to get diversity kind of by default. But like the minute you start going, oh, this is the only type of people we're going to look for, this is the only type of people that we're going to empower, then you kind of are doing the same thing except in reverse. And so I think just by being out there, we're running this, this program, and we make sure that, hey, the key people that started it were women, and one of them is a Black woman, and just people will figure it out. They're not idiots. They'll be like, oh, I didn't even know. Oh, look, there's somebody over there that kind of looks like me, and they're doing it, and they're able to do it. And all right, well, I never even thought about it. Let me think about it. Let me go to a couple meetups. Let me see if this is for me. And if it's not, you know what? It's totally fine. If it's not for you, then great. But for the people that, I always say, even if we just helped one person get out in the fire department, it was worth it.
And one more person to get the career that you love, right? And that person. So I think you said so much in that I can talk about it all forever, right? I love the cast a wide net thing because again, if you only went to churches to recruit for the fire department job, you're not going to get a really diverse group of people. You're going to get a bunch of church-going people. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but you need a little bit of everyone in this, right? You need to go to rugby tournaments and churches and sit outside the grocery store and just make it appealing, because that's what makes this job the best part of it, is all the different people that do it and that want to do it. And then you have that big net. and that big net of people, like you said, come to a couple meetups and we'll tell you more about this. Well, that group always gets smaller and smaller, right? Like when
Yeah.
it's like, and especially now, and I talk about this a lot with off the job things, is when you start to really be truthful. Hey, you're probably going to suffer from sleep deprivation. Hey,
Yeah.
we have a large substance abuse problem that we're trying to address through different ways. Hey, you're going to need to be super physically fit, not just for the academy, but your entire career, because this
Yes.
job does not get any easier.
No.
Um, and then you see that pool, that huge pool is just kind of like, and then
Yeah.
you have to take a really hard test on top of this, like, and come out somewhere. So I love that you kind of added that part in, casting that wide net. And I'm sure you see that on your end way more, right? You see a lot of people come to the group and then it just kind of divvies down a little bit, right?
Yeah, you can almost tell when we have our, when people start, coming in influx, you can always tell who is at the end of it probably going to be a firefighter with probably 95% accuracy. Like you can look at this person and just for the first time meeting them and you're like, okay, this person is going to make it. And then you meet other people and you're like, I don't know. But the thing is, we give everybody a chance. We don't say that you have to come to a certain number of them. Just, hey, come when you want and keep applying, and all the help that you need, we'll give it to you. And you can we let people figure it out on their own. And exactly like you said, usually they start to kind of figure out, you know what, this kind of isn't for me. Like I have to, see people that are murdered. I have to be up all night for 3 days. And I guess that was a big thing for me because you brought up the sleep deprivation. And it was never, because I always worked nights, I waited tables and stuff. And I've always had like 2 or 3 jobs, so I never really got a lot of sleep anyway. So that was never an issue for me. And I don't know if it's maybe a little bit of the younger generation, but that is probably the question we get the most. How do you guys, I don't even know how we're going to do this for 20, and I'm just like, it's only a day.
I'm like you though. I didn't think about it because in my early 20s working EMS, I worked night shift. And that's actually how I met my wife. She was working night shift in the ER and we were just, vampires. We were up all night and we slept most of the day and our family got used to that. Like, don't call me before 3 because I'm sleeping. Right. Even on my days off. So then go to the fire department and it's like, well, there's beds here. Shh, don't tell anyone. But like you can sleep a little bit. But as I got older into that lifestyle, that's when I really started realizing that, oh my God, these sleep patterns, things I never thought about in my life, this getting up, the light turns on and my heart rate shoots to 900 in a second really affects me and I have to handle that. So it's interesting that this younger generation is like afraid of it almost already because they have a good sense of it, right?
Yeah, they're already thinking about it. Like when I was in my 20s, it didn't affect me at all. Like I could stay up for, 3 days studying and, I mean, like when I was getting my bachelor's degree, I was working 3 jobs. Like it wasn't uncommon for me to be up that same amount of time. And you're right. I didn't start thinking about it until probably my late 30s and then definitely after 40. Like it was like, oh my God, like, just that, and then we're a very busy fire department. And so we're up a lot. And I've always been at busy stations and I got hired at 30. So now I'm at a slow station, but this is the first time in my whole career that I've been at a slow station. So I probably did 15 years at busy stations, 14, 15 years at busy stations where we used to say the one station, you would get a call every 86 minutes.
Oh my God.
So, yeah.
Oh my God.
Which is just it's almost worse. It would be better if it was like I've also worked at stations where it's back-to-back calls all night, which is almost better because you don't get that moment of, okay, I'm gonna rest, and then now I'm just falling asleep, and now I've got to wake up, And so, and now I drive.
When you figure it to the minute, I mean, that's total firefighter like behavior. Like, all right, let me get you have like every firehouse has the math person like that was super great at math whenever they were, and they figure out all the numbers. They figure out your pension. They figure out your healthcare benefit. All that number. It's like a computer in your head. Anywhere you go in the country, folks, that person exists. On the TV show The Bear, they call him the computer. He exists for them as well, on that show. But you always have the computer, and there was definitely a computer that's like, I figured it out. It's every 86 minutes where that thing's going off again. They're telling me what to do.
It is, and it was true. Like, we mapped it out one night. We were just like, oh yeah, it was like, it's roughly that, and it just, and it's exhausting, and it's that wear kind of over time. So it is interesting to see that people who were 22, 23, 24 are like, wait a second. How am I going to do this?
But I want to be honest with them too about it. I'm not going to lie about it, and things where like, you just have to be prepared for this,
Yeah.
like, look, every time it's the day after your shift, you have to realize that day, even if you didn't turn a wheel all night, if you only went out once all night, that day is still not the same as your other days off, where you didn't have that alert mode sleep, as I kind of like to call it a little bit, right?
Yeah, I've never been. There's a small percentage of people that I know on our department that can actually like sleep at work. I'm not one of them. I mean, I'm sleeping, but it's not like restful sleep like at home.
Look at your, everybody's got one of these on them. Like, look at what your watch says now. Like,
yeah, and then you see like, oh, I woke up, and and it's just, it's one of those things where it's just like, I accept it. And you're right. Like, on your day off, even if you didn't run, calls, and then if you have a significant other that's like kind of not in the business, they don't understand. They're like, you didn't get any calls. And it's like, yeah, but you're not really sleeping. Sometimes that's worse. Well, we're at, because then you're like, I've gotten up some nights, and when it's like that, and walked out to the rig to like look at the computer and make sure we didn't miss a call. Like, are we in service? Like, did an accident happen? Like, the computer, like, are we like missing out on something? Like, and then I'm like,
are all the rigs there? Did they leave without me? Like, did I miss one?
Yeah. And and that's the thing. Like, I'm like, they couldn't leave without me. I'm the driver. But like, anyway, but like, you do, like, you think like, oh, did I sleep through a call? And then you'll have like those dreams where you're dreaming, but you're dreaming about work at work. And then you like wake up and you're like, oh my God, and then you're like looking around and you're like, was that real? Was that like, you have no idea what was real or not. Oh God, it's the nightmares.
It's again, like, people talk about this, and these things all happen, right? Where like, it's not sleep. It's rest, for lack of a better term, and you're getting it, which is a good thing, right? Because you really shouldn't be up for that long. But it's not this restful sleep, and it does affect us in so many ways. And the more we talk about it, and the more we explain it to even the younger generation, like, be prepared for this. And we all have those stories of getting up in the middle of the night and looking to be like, oh, did I miss a call? Or dreaming about. You made me think of this. It wasn't a dream about work, but. So I'm really fortunate in our main station, even though it's 98 years old, we all have our own room, which is really strange that 98 years ago, someone was like, let's put 22 rooms in a firehouse for the fire.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's really strange. And so, I would always sleep in my room. And one night, I don't know if I was on an overtime shift or I was in a swap, and I slept in a different room. And the bed was on the different wall side.
Oh,
alarm came in, and I turned to go, and I just went right into the wall. Like, the dude on the other side, and I'm not a very big man, actually came to my room to be like, what just happened? Like, before we went to the rig, like, are you okay? I'm like, I got out the wrong side of the bed. Like, I'm coming. Like, I rang my clock like no other on that wall.
I'm sure, because you've spent years doing it one way, and then you have to do it another way. So, okay, so when our stations out here get built, it's just so hilarious that it's just a shared experience that we all have, right, as firefighters. And I'm sure like military guys are the same way. But so all of our fire stations, like, they'll build them in clumps. Like, I can't remember. It's either every 5 or 10 years we go with a certain builder, and it gets bid out and all that stuff. And then they build the stations. Whoever the builder is builds the identical station over and over again. So we have a lot of stations that are identical. And so the same thing, when you're working overtime in a different station, it's the same, you'll be in the same like quote room, but you're in a different station. So the bed might be on a different side. And that happens every single time. You'll turn into the wall, or you'll run out into the hallway, and because the orientation of it's the same hallways, but the orientation might be kind of different. You'll be like, wait, where am I? Like, you can't remember where you are.
Think, and I tell people this that are talking about this or about the job. I'm like, think about being woken up in the middle of the night at home and you're like, where am I? I'm like, now imagine doing that someplace else, like totally different. And not only that, but you have to then be like, you have to go from sleep to you're the driver. I'm driving a $1 million rig down the road here, and I hated driving. I hate even now when I'm on the acting up on the deputy's car. I love having an aide because I don't have to drive, and they all everyone knows it. They're like, "Oh boy, Pip's got to drive again." I'm like, "I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be okay today, all by myself here." But it's that like there's so much going through your head, and that affects you. That affects you mentally. That affects you physically. There's no study out there that says it, but it 100% does.
Yeah, you have to be able to be up and functional. And then if you're driving, you have to be able to multitask. And it is just, I mean, so I had just real quick, I had my ex-boyfriend was a teacher, and he didn't get why I would sleep during the day after work. Like, he was like, I can't believe you're going to sleep every day. And so this went on for like maybe a year or two. And then I was finally like, look, we can do something. We're going to play Station 27 tonight, where you're going to be up all day and you're going to just go about your business. And then tonight, I'm going to set the alarm for every 86 minutes. I'm going to wake you up. We're going to go out to your car. We're going to drive the 1.5 miles to the grocery store. Because in Vegas, everything's open 24 hours. We're going to drive the 1.5 miles to the grocery store. I'm going to make you pick 7 different things off the shelf and go and pay for it. Then we're going to come home. Then we're going to go back to sleep. I'm going to wake you up 86 minutes later. I can do this all day, but I was like, I can do this, no problem. And then we're going to do this all night, and then you're going to stay up all day the next day. And then we'll see. And he was just like, I don't want to play Station 27. And I was like,
this is not a relationship game I want to play with you. Like this.
Yeah, he's like, I get it. I don't. And then he stopped because he would be like really disruptive in the house. Like when I'd be sleeping, he'd be like slamming cabinet doors and like, like trying to wake me up, And I was like, dude,
it's
this
can't go on. We're seeing now so many academies that do that, like day in the life. You're going to work at 24 where, they go on an EMS alarm. They go on an activated fire alarm. And, the night for them, it always culminates with the biggest fire of your career that you're never going to see. Listen, give these recruits a chance to actually see what this lifestyle is like, I love it. In our academies that we're running now, I mean, they do housework every day. They clean their classroom every day.
Yeah.
Just like they start their morning, just like we start our morning.
And that's what we do in our academy. We, make, you have to, when you get there in the morning, you clean the training center, which is, emulates, okay, we're going to clean the station and do all that stuff, because you have to somehow instill that stuff early. Like, you have to be like, hey, this is our routine. We have this routine for a reason because the rest of the day is unknown. So if you have these certain things that are known, that kind of alleviates some stress of the day. I know every day when I come in, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to put my stuff on the rig. I'm going to check out the rig. Then we're going to go and clean. Then we're going to have breakfast and have a sit down. Then maybe we'll do some training and whatever, and maybe some calls mixed in there. But I know as a core, every single day we're going to do these 5 or 7 things. And then that then takes some of the stress off the day. Because you don't ever know, is today the day when the Monte Carlo is going to burn down? Is today the day when we're going to have an active shooter? You never know if that's going to happen. But I do know one thing. We're going to check out the rig.
That toilet is going to be cleaned every day because the shift before you is a bunch of Neanderthals and you have to clean it for them. And they say the same thing. And the people the next day say the same thing about you. So it's okay. Just that's what you have to do. You're certain things. I love it. And that goes to something you said way back when too, that I didn't have time to hone in on it. But is that like that mentorship end of what you're giving the folks in the Explorer group as well, right? Because for folks that don't have people in this business type thing, they don't get that mentorship of what a firefighter really is, what a paramedic is. And I can tell you, my older son wants nothing to do with this because he was playing lacrosse a few weeks ago, and a kid either dislocated or fractured his ankle right in front of him.
Oh,
And so after the game, or they actually stopped the game and played it later, but when he came over, it was like, "Yeah, all right, bud," and he's like, "It was disgusting, Dad. What? No." Like, and I'm like, "All right, well, you're definitely not going into mommy or daddy's job. Like, we got you. Like, that's cool." He's like, "I couldn't look at it. I almost vomited." And we're like, "Was the bone sticking out?" Because, like, it didn't look that bad from where we were. I felt bad for the
yeah.
kid. But he's like, "No, but it was disgusting, and I can't."
Yeah, because it was like wavy, probably. He was
Yeah,
just
or,
like,
or
oh,
it
I'm
was going
not
the wrong
having
way.
this.
It was more of it was probably a dislocation. We never found
Mm.
out because he was on the other team, but it was probably a
Uh,
dislocated ankle. So his foot was going the other way, which is gross. I don't deny it to my
yeah,
son,
yeah.
right? But at the same time, he's really into the arts, and
Mm,
through friends in the fire department, we now have a few mentors for him who
hmm.
are Broadway composers and
Oh,
Broadway
wow.
actors and things. Because I can't tell them. He has a question. I'm like, call Matthew, man. Matthew knows this. I don't know anything about this. So you see the same thing in what you're giving, those 16 to 21-year-olds.
Yeah, and it's not for everybody, right? This profession's not for everybody. And so it's better that you find it out sooner rather than later
For
instead
sure.
of putting all this time in. And I think nowadays people, this is why we had to start the group for people later in life. I think nowadays um people are deciding way later kind of what they want to do. There's not, I mean, you have kids. I don't have kids, so people are always like, you don't know. But I
You have
think
kids. You work in a
now,
firehouse. You have kids. We all have kids in the firehouse.
right,
So.
all the guys are children. Um, um, I think, and I mean, well, my dad was I'm first generation American because my dad wasn't born in this country.
Okay.
So there was this big push that when you were done with high school, you were either going to college or you were getting a job and you were moving out, and you were like, that was like kind of that generation of, that was the last of it, I think, Gen X, of where you were expected to leave the house when you graduate, and know what you better know. Like, I remember being like 7 years old and people being like, do you know what you want to do with yourself? Like, why don't you have a job now? Like, I mean, I got my first job when I was 13. So it was a thing back then. And so now I think people are a little bit more relaxed about it. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just the way life is. I think people are a lot more relaxed about it. They're like, hey, you can live at home and stay here and maybe decide what you want to do, whatever. You're like, no, he's moving out.
I'm right. No, I'm right there with you. I do think there's a generation there in the middle where that became okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that now my generation is seeing that again. Listen, I tell my kids this. You'll always have a place to live with mom and dad, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to retire in a few years.
Yeah.
And, we're not going to go anywhere until they finish high school. But I'm like, that address, mommy and I's plan is not to stay in New Jersey forever. We want to go here. We want to go there. I'm like, so
right.
your address may be different, and it's not going to be, the room is not going to be the size it is in this house, buddy. Like,
no.
It's all downsizing. So be ready for that. And we'll see where it goes. It's the same as your folks saying, like, get a job and you're out. I feel like it's the same thing. You can come, but it may not be as comfortable as this place.
Yeah, see, my parents were like, you're not coming. Like, like, we will murder you.
I'm going to be in the middle, though. But see, it's where that middle is, right? Where, like,
right.
You had your parents that were like, okay, you're not coming. Get out. Do your own thing. Then you have this group of folks out there that are like, oh, no, it's okay. You're 34. Come on back. Live with
yeah.
No, man. No. I did this.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is, it's like you're doing the smart thing because Jersey is expensive, and you can take all the Jersey money from your house and move somewhere and live like a king. Like, just be like.
So they say. So they tell me. I'm not willing to look that far yet, but again, Jersey is very expensive.
It's very expensive.
It's explaining to my kids that too. Like, listen, I love New Jersey. I will always be from New Jersey, no matter where I go. So will they. But maybe look to getting out, and it's the same. I tell folks here, so a lot of folks come to myself for being a firefighter, my wife for being a physician assistant, because we are kind of social media people. And they're like, oh, could you talk to my son or daughter about what it is you do? And one of the first things we always say is get out of New Jersey. I feel like there's more opportunity in other states, you know, because you said it in the beginning. In New Jersey, we do still have a lot of volunteer departments. So
Yeah.
the chance to apply, and most career departments are civil service. So you only
Yeah.
get one shot. You take the test for the town you live in. Whereas when you branch out, you have county departments like yours, or
Yeah.
North Las Vegas, Clark County, all these places that you can test for all in one shot. You
Yeah.
take one test and you have that. So
Well,
cast your
no,
net wide.
we don't do joint tests anymore because City of Las Vegas was stealing all the good people, and they actually one of the cadre admitted that to me at the graduation. He was like, because he stole our girl that we wanted, our woman that we wanted to hire, and he was like, not specifically for her, but like I was like, you guys know you stole her, right? And he's like, oh yeah, we do that on purpose. He's like, we make sure we close our application deadlines like way before you guys so we can get the good people.
You get the top
And
candidates.
so when we were joint testing, it was even like they would rush their human resources department where we couldn't. And so then they would get the cream of, they would get all the top people. And then I'm like, okay, we're left with, and I'm like so mad about that. But we don't test with, so you have to take different tests. And that's actually a good point. Like we tell all of our people to test everywhere. When I was testing, I took 14 tests. And I tested in Colorado, where I eventually end up getting my bachelor's degree in Colorado, and working as a paramedic there. And so then that was kind of what inspired me to like kind of become a firefighter. So I started testing in Colorado. Then I moved to Vegas and started testing here. Then I started testing in California. And I was en route to, if I didn't get hired, with Clark County, which I ended up doing, I was getting ready to take tests in Arizona. And I mean, it wasn't quite the Yellow Pages era, but it wasn't like it is now, where you can just go online and just fill out 50 applications in a day and be done. It wasn't like that, but you had to I think you had to get on like some nationwide, there was only like one like nationwide website that had all the fire departments that were testing.
I used to get that email. I paid that guy whatever it was to get that email because I was testing in any state I could think of, anywhere that would come up. But like you said, it wasn't always the easiest either because you were filling out paper applications and mailing them. And
yes,
a lot of times out of state candidates probably got lost in the mail or all that kind of things that weren't happening like they are now. So
yeah, and they definitely obviously they give preference to, especially California, they give preference to, they have like a California like fire academy thing. And so like those people, I'm sure, like go to the top of the list. But being a medic, you can kind of weasel your way in there.
The medic way is the way to go. Whoever told you that, like way back in the day, was 100% right. If you're going out west, or like you said in the beginning, like get your medic, get your basic, get your medic, and you have a pretty decent foot in the door. East Coast wise, that is like DC. Like you could work in DC as a medic like tomorrow. They'll be like, oh, you applied today? You're hired.
Yeah.
Get on the truck.
They're like, we need you.
We need you right now. Get on the truck. I don't have a uniform. Get on the truck. You'll be fine.
That's almost how we are right now in Clark County, because we're trying to, grow our fire department. And with that, you need a medic on every rig. And we need paramedics. And so that is definitely, like, we tell all the people in our mentor group, go as high as you can in your EMS cert. Medic is the best. We're like, if you want to get hired right now, that's the ticket, especially like kind of like if you don't know anyone or whatever, and you're just getting into it. For me, I became a medic with no aspiration to be a firefighter. I didn't know that was like, I already became a paramedic. And then in medic school in Michigan, they were like, oh, you should go to the community college also did a fire academy. And they were like, oh, you should go to that fire academy too. And I'm like, women don't do that. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I thought they were messing with me. And I was like, whatever, I'm gonna get my bachelor's degree. And so I ended up moving to Colorado and got my bachelor's degree. And then, so I was already a medic and I had my bachelor's degree. And then I was making more money as a medic in Colorado than I could have with my bachelor's degree. So I was just kind of like, yeah, right. And it's less like, and then they were like, well, if you want to make money with this bachelor's degree, you have to go back and get your master's. And I was like, oh, even more money? So they had, this was in Fort Collins, Colorado, and they had one black firefighter on their fire department. and one of our ambulance stations was in the station that was in the fire station that he worked at. And he was always like, "Oh, it's a great job," and and he was explaining to me like what it was. And then he was like, "Oh, and they only work 10 days a month. You could," and I'm like, "I can do that stuff." And he's like, "You could totally do it."
Well,
And
isn't that, I see, I like that part, regardless of being a female, male, black, white, whatever, you have so many people that are like, I can't do that.
yeah,
And you have to be like, have you ever tried?
that's
Right?
what he was. Yeah,
It's a really easy answer because I hear that all the time. And people, especially for me, being on the way shorter side of things, are like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I tried. I get
yeah,
strong. Like, I
yeah,
figured out ways to do these things that I have to do. And you can too. And you're right. You said it before. It's not for everybody. You'll also learn really quickly. This is not for me. Like,
yeah,
holy shit, it's dark in here. If you
yeah.
say it's dark in there, then maybe you shouldn't do this job.
And I've seen huge people that when you look at them, you're like, "Oh, they could totally do this job," and they suck at it.
Mm-hmm.
They're terrible at it. And then you see people, and you're just like, "Oh man, I don't know." Like he's like one of our best candidates right now. I don't want to jinx him, but I won't say his name. But one of our best mentor students right now is a smaller guy. But I'm telling you, he shows up every single time. He's the hardest worker, and I'm like, I want him. And he can do all the skills. He just had to have someone teach him. But I bet you, like, he at first was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know." And he's an older dude. I think he's over 30. And I think he and I are roughly the same height. I'm 5'5". So, but he throws the ladders. Because if I can do it, he can do it. And I think that is like such an important distinction, is because, yeah, he sees me, and okay, I don't exactly look like him, but I don't exactly look like the poster of what a firefighter should be. And so he's like,
100%.
"Okay, if I don't have to look like that poster, she's been doing it all this time and does a good job at it. That means, you know what? Let me go ahead and it opens that door for people to try and not feel like nervous about it, or feel like they're going to look stupid, or or people are going to be laughing. Like and once they try it,
it's also the honesty of folks like you and folks like me, folks out there that are saying like, look, none of us are perfect at this. We all have to learn it, and we're all still learning. Like, I always make the joke now, like, I'm the old salty captain, but when these recruits come out of the academy, I'm like, show me what they taught you in there, because they're teaching you it differently than they taught me for sure. And you got stuff to teach me, buddy. Like, let me see what's the new thing Lieutenant taught you in the academy. Like, how'd that work out for you? Let me see it.
So we spent the 15 years before. I've been on 17 and a half years. So the first 15 years of my career, we flat loaded we have pre-connects, cross lays, and we flat loaded those for 15 years. Now we're using the Minuteman deployment, which is a way better way to deploy hose, and it doesn't tangle, and it's just the superior way to do it. But now you're taking 15 years, and it's not the deploying it. It's when we go to reload it. My captain is out of my rookie school, and we're always like, "Wait, which
Which
and
one
we
you
go
do
and
again?
get one of
Yeah.
the newer people. We're like, "Hey, which loop is, like, where do we
Come over here, please, for a second. Shh, don't tell anyone else."
Yeah, and we're just like, because just because we've been on longer doesn't mean we know everything.
Yeah.
And so you have to, have that humility in order to be like, okay, I can still learn from these people, just as they can learn from us too. But I think, in all of that, like, you have to, use each other. And then that's where, like, circling back, that's where diversity comes into it, right? Is because if you have all of the same person, you're never going to evolve, right?
Yep.
And so if you inject all these other different personalities and backgrounds and people who have different strengths and different weaknesses, then you become the strongest team. And then that team is the one that you want to show up. I always say, when you look at a football team, everybody doesn't look the same. The kicker doesn't look like the linebacker. They all look different because they all have different specific jobs. They can all do the basic job of a football player. They can all throw, catch, tackle, and do all that stuff. It's just certain people are better at other things. And then when you're creating your team, you want the best guy at each thing, not just a bunch of dudes who are kind of great at all of the things. You want like specialized. And then, hey, we can hit that average mark with everybody, but then we have certain guys in certain positions because they're exceptional at that. And then when you get on your crew, it's the same thing in the fire department. You have some people who are exceptional at throwing ladders or forcible entry. They can force a door really quick or whatever. And so you know that, and you work with people's strengths. Some people are really good at EMS and average at some of the fire stuff, and vice versa. A lot of the times it works both ways. And it's like, look, we need all of us. It's going to take all of us to do this incredibly dynamic job. And I think that's what people, laymen, don't understand, especially when we're looking at our pay. This job is incredibly dynamic. We've been having a lot of rookies lately. I think we've hired about 150 people in the last year and a half. Actually, it's probably more than that. It's probably like 200. But anyway, so we've been having a lot of rookies, and we've been doing a lot of training. And I was standing there watching this rookie train, and she had to like throw a ladder and then caught a hydrant. And then we did like some forcible entry that day. And then later that day, we had a cardiac arrest. And I'm like, she had to be proficient at all of these vastly different things. And I always say, it's like, if a guy is doing brain surgery, at the end of the brain surgery, they're not like, hey, we also have a short in that light, and then we're going to need you to jump up there on a ladder and be proficient at fixing that light that's out too. No, he shows up and does one thing. He's expected to do one thing, brain surgery. That's it. We're expected to be like incredibly proficient at vehicle extrication. And like randomly,
you name it, we're the all hazards group, right? You have to do it all. So it's so interesting because you've like rewritten the definition of diversity in my mind now, right? Because when we think diversity, we think it's just how people look, maybe, and things like that. But really, in the fire service, it's not really how they look. It's this diverse group of people and their life experience that we all bring together to do this, again, like you said, dynamic job.
Right.
And to me, that's what I love about it. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's the casting the wide net, right?
Yep.
You're not looking for one specific culture. You cast that wide net, and it will happen just incidentally, because you're looking for people with different strengths. And those different strengths just might happen to come from somebody who's a different gender. Those different strengths might just happen to come from somebody who is a different ethnicity. But you don't want to go looking for that. You want to go looking for people who have different strengths and weaknesses and let it all fall into place organically, which it will happen. And I think a lot of times, because people have to make quotas and all that stuff, it makes them really nervous to not choose one group, because they're like, oh, it might not happen, and then we look racist, and oh my God, I don't want that. And it's like, no, just relax. We're just going to cast this broad net and let all these people come in. We can't just have a women's group when there's never going to be enough women to fully staff a fire department. We're desperate right now just trying to find people that are capable of doing all of these things, because most people don't work with their hands nowadays. Most people don't work outside. It's going to be 118 degrees today. When you have to put all that shit on, look, you don't want to walk across the street.
I thought I was the only person that said that. I hate putting all this shit on all the time. Like, when you see people taking pictures after fires, I'm like, why do you still have that gear on? I want this off of me. Like,
yeah. And then the worst thing is, I mean, we're a busy fire department. Yeah. So you might have the worst part. We don't have two sets of turnouts. So the worst part is you get some car fire and you sweat the shit out of your gear, and then now you get a working fire like 2 hours later, and you're trying to pull that wet. Oh my God. Oh, it's so gross. And you're just uncomfortable.
You're at 118. I mean, we're around 100 here in New Jersey with this crazy humidity these past few weeks. We're on we just call them red flag days, and it's like, unless they say fire, don't put your gear on. because you
Yeah.
don't want to have your sweaty gear when you go into the next fire or you go
Yeah,
into that next call. It's like, don't
you're
even waste
trying
your
to
time.
avoid that.
I'll put it
Yeah,
on
and
when we
it
get
just
there. Like if something changes, people are like, how do you do that? You need to be ready out the door. I'm like, look, man, it's 100 degrees. If I get
yeah.
there and then things change, I'll put it on there. The same time it would have taken me before I went in the rig, it's going to take me
Yeah. And it only takes 2 minutes, so we
Everybody
can
goes
get
quick,
turned
right?
out in
It's just
two
like that.
minutes. So, and yeah, it just, and with it, and honestly, let me just say, the 100 in Jersey with that humidity, I will take our 118. And I know people are like, no, that's not true. No, Jersey, it was like you could taste the heat out there with the I mean, oh, and then the
Right now, you could
cicadas
taste the
get
heat.
going.
You could taste the heat right now. It's been
Oh,
That's been not good. Let's just say, and it's really not going to get any better. And the scary part for us is that it's only right now. This episode will come out in I think in August, but it's only
yeah,
July. So we're
it's
all just
only
like,
July.
what's August going to be like if this is what July is like?
We have this same mindset. We're like, okay, now we're in the thick of it. And when it's this hot, usually like these years, because we have like everybody's overreacting and being like, oh my god, this is the hottest it's ever been. No, it's not. Like, whatever, by like 1 degree. They're like, we beat the record. It's like, okay, it's 1 degree, calm down. Like, but like every 4 or 5 years we get a really hot year. And usually out here, here's where it's a little different, where maybe you guys have that edge. It'll stretch into like September, October. It'll be 90. And so,
We're
and it
stretching
doesn't.
though. We're definitely stretching though. We're starting earlier and going longer is what I
Oh,
noticed.
really? Okay.
But I also don't know because I'm not that guy that like, oh, we broke the record. I don't know if it's just my old saltiness in my 40s now. I'm just being like, this is horrible. Like,
Yeah. No, it's hot. I put like, so our engineers, we don't usually get turned out because we have to drive to the, and somebody was saying like we're one of the only fire departments that like we get turned out en route to the call. Like everybody gets in and gets turned out in the vehicle. And so obviously I'm driving and I don't have my gear in the cab. Obviously I can't drive and turn out at the same time. So usually engineers, when we get there, we, get out and help with water supply and all that stuff, and everybody else. And then it's a 3-person crew goes in because we rent 4-man engines. And so it's a 3-person crew goes in and fights fire and does all that stuff. But every once in a while, if we get there, the engineer has their choice if they want to get turned out. And we had 2 rookies with us the other day. And like I said, my captain, we went to rookie school together. And I was kind of like, oh, I don't want to. And I said, hey, do you want me with you? And he was just like, yeah, like this is going to be a long incident because the roof was burning off the house. And he was like, we're going to be here a while. And I was like, all right, let me get turned out and I'll catch up to you. And yeah, I mean, it is out of the ordinary. And granted, I don't have to get turned out as much as the firefighters. But because it's so hot and because it's so uncomfortable, when we work out, I always work out in my turnout so I don't deacclimate to my gear because you can't reclimb that mountain, especially as you get older. Like, it becomes more important that, okay, I stay acclimated to my gear. And then plus two, I kind of wanted the rookies to see that too, that, hey, like, for the rest of your career, like you were saying, for the rest of your career, it is your obligation to stay fit, to stay acclimated to your gear, to still be able to do this job, even no matter what your rank. You still have to be able to get turned out, go on air, do work, be okay, not be like, oh my God,
I'm going to happen. You never know where you're going to be. Like, it's one of the craziest things in that dynamic atmosphere that you described. And it also goes back to that word you used before again of mentorship. You're mentoring them without even mentoring them by being like, look, listen, man, it's not just I'm gonna get here and be like, peace out, the 3 of you, go with Cap. I'm gonna go hang out with my engineer group over here with no gear on because there's days. So my department is way smaller. My shift is between like 16 and 25 people per day, whatever it is. Our second and third due drivers are packing up and going in, and you need to be ready for that. You know what I mean? Like, or it may be like the third due driver's like, hey, I'm not feeling good today. So he'll switch with the first due driver and the first due driver will throw on gear to go in with his crew, whatever it is, however you're going to work. But that thing is all stuff that young firefighters look to that person as being like, oh, wow, that was different, but they did it.
Yeah.
And you need to keep that in mind, especially how you said before with the newer, more of like, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm playing on my phone technology, kids that are coming to the job with less hands-on experience.
Right.
And that type of a thing. But it's always good. And that's mentorship to me. That's positive. That's positivity. And that's making the change in the fire service that we need.
Yeah, because as humans, we do what we see. And I was very conscious of that fact that they're seeing me, they know how much time I have on, and they're like, look, she could have chosen just been like, yeah, see you guys later. But like, they're like, oh no, she chose to, get turned out and do all that stuff and come and help us and be with us. And so hopefully like those are the kind of things that I'll probably forget about like 2 days from now. But they'll remember for their career.
At your retirement party, they'll say that to you. Like, do you remember that day we went on that fire? It was 118 degrees, and you asked the captain, like, why'd you do that? Like, that was really cool. Like, because that's my boy. That's my buddy. Like, and because you two idiots were in the back and have no experience, so I needed to help.
Yeah, and I was worried. But I mean, they were fine. I mean, they did a great job.
But again, it's those things that, like you said, they're gonna remember that probably. They may remember that, and even to say that, like, and I mean, just knowing myself as a rookie, thinking back, so when I got hired we got put on the engine, our driver was like the senior man on the job. And we do a lot of mutual aid fires, and we went to one really early out in my career. And like all of a sudden, like here he is walking up with all his gear on, and it's like, yo, man, this dude's got 27 years on the job, and he's all excited. Like he's like, all right, I'm going in. Like, here we go. And we're also kind of like, no, just stand over here. We'll do this.
And I mean, and I'm excited too, because like, first of all, like, I had the axe, they were, because they're new, so they get the hose line. And I'm like, great, now I get to break shit. Like, this is awesome. I haven't gotten to break stuff. And that's the good thing about being a firefighter. That's the difference between being a firefighter and a cop, is the cops show up and they like knock on the door and people get pissed off. Us, we show up and we get everything wet. We break the door down. We like wreck all their stuff, and people are like, "Thank you so much for breaking everything." Like they're just so happy with us,
brave. I'm so happy you're here. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I'm so happy. We called the fire department. They
broke every window in my house.
Yeah.
You broke my garage. Cut my garage doors open.
Burned the roof off the house.
Never gonna use these garage doors again because you used that big saw and cut them.
It just cut like all the way down. Yeah, it's so funny. But that's the glory that we can share,
Jennifer, this is exactly what I told you it was going to be. Is I'm going to look down and be like, man, we're already over the hour I said I was going to keep her. And I feel like it's been such a great conversation about so many things I didn't think it was going to be. We didn't get to talk about the rock climbing that you do, and the horses and all these, and your hair braids that are amazing looking, to shout out to your stylist that we talked about prior to setting up this episode. But I really don't want to keep you much longer, but I know I would love to have you back on again, because this has just been a good time. And I feel like I want to call Jeremy and be like, yo, we both need to interview her next. Like, that should be the next one, the two of us in this conversation.
And I'm always open to, like I said, I'm very chatty. Like, I'm always open to whenever you guys want to talk, because I really do, like I told Jeremy, I really do think it's an important message to get out there. Because I think that, I'm trying to think of a PC way to say this, but like, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on the people who are kind of the stereotypical firefighter kind of person to accept people who maybe aren't the stereotype. And I can't say it enough that while, I've had difficulties on the fire department, I really always like to kind of just focus on the huge majority of people who have done nothing but help me out and mentor me and be there for me. And I've made some of the best relationships of my entire life that I would have never met if I hadn't gotten on the fire department. And some really, really stellar people. And so I think that kind of message needs to get out there, because I think it's more like there's a lot of negativity on social media and the media in general, and they'd rather focus on, oh, this big group of people is harassing this smaller group of people and they really don't care. And I think we kind of need to get out there and say, okay, yeah, there might be a couple of jackasses, but that's in everything. And for the most part, if this is something that you think you should do, just because you don't fit in a certain mold doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yes,
And
try it, right? That's the
yeah,
key, is
and
try it.
yeah, and you know better just than anyone because you don't fit inside that mold either, right? And so it's like, and that can be a metaphor for any career.
Yep. You have to try
Go and
everything.
try
That's what I
it.
tell my kids. You want to do something, try it. I don't know. It's not going to work out.
Yeah.
You know, they did jujitsu, then they went from jujitsu to lacrosse. Now they're going
Hmm.
from lacrosse to music. Like, hey, you're trying all these different things, and they were all things I never did. I never played lacrosse. I can't sing.
Yeah.
I never did jujitsu. You know what I mean? Like, try it. See what happens.
And I think that's the good thing. I was trashing parents a minute ago, but no, I think that's the good thing about this generation's parents is my generation of parents were like, no, go to school. You're not, we're not paying for this crap, you know? Like, and I think this generation is really, really just inspiring their kids to really go out and try. And I think even if they don't stick with it, it makes you a better person because you have all these different experiences. And
Yeah.
the more diverse you can be as a person, the better your adulthood is going to be because you're going to be like, you know what? I've seen this before somewhere else, or I've seen this and I know how to react in this situation because of lacrosse, or I know how to kind of deal with this other person over here because I learned some discipline in jujitsu or whatever. And so I think that that is a great thing. And then I think it's up to us as the fire department to snatch those people up and then be like, oh, okay, like you have all these different traits and qualities that we can use. It might not, you know, be direct fire experience, but you have experience doing this, 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 and this, and we can take that and then exploit it, for lack of a better word, in the fire department.
Make you a better employee, right? Make
Yeah.
you a better firefighter. Make you better for the team. And
Yeah.
so many people need to hear that. I hope so many people listen to this. I know a lot of my listeners are not in the emergency services, which I
Okay.
find to be really cool. So where can folks find you on social media in case maybe they have a question that they want to ask you and they don't want to ask me?
On Facebook and Instagram, we are FD_Beyond Explorers. But I think if you just put in FD Beyond Explorers, it'll come up. You can also reach me on my horse rescue website, which is Fire and Ice Horses. And I have a website for that. And then we're on Facebook, Instagram, and I'm almost never on Twitter. But I do have a Twitter account there, but I'm almost never on.
It's now known as X.
As X, yeah, whatever.
At the Times, it's now known as X. I so wanted to talk about the horse rescue thing too, because that's what you do mostly another thing you do off the job that matters. So we're gonna have to have just a horse rescue episode. So.
Oh, and I've done a few horse podcasts as well. So trust me, I can go. I've never been described as quiet, so I can go on.
Which is another positive in the fire service because we're all chatty out there. When
I think it's because I'm from New Jersey. Like people from New York and New Jersey talk a lot.
Yeah, and we have that commonality of just being from New Jersey and understanding this Jerseyness that goes. So
yeah.
All right, well, let's finish up with the size up 10. It's supposed to be 10 quick questions. Everyone knows they're never quick, and especially when I have a chatty person from New Jersey on the podcast, we're going to just talk about all 10 of them, and this will be a 2-hour episode instead of one. Although my older son just walked by giving me the eye, like, I'm tired of being quiet, Dad. You need to wrap it. Like, giving me the, like, take it to the end, but that's his problem. All right, here we go. Number 1, beach or mountains?
Beach.
See, Jersey girl at heart. Can't change it. So shore. So really shore then, not beach. Shore or mountain.
Yeah.
It should be. Night out or night in?
Oh boy. When I was 20 to 30, it was night out. Now that I'm over 40, it's night in.
Yeah. Unless you're playing Station 27 with your significant
Unless it's
other,
Station 27 or our July 4th, which was like the purge. So.
Going to the next question. A good movie everyone has to see.
Yeah.
No, that's the next question. Give me a movie everyone has to see.
A movie everyone has to see. Hell or High Water.
Okay, I think I've seen that actually.
Oh, it's such a great movie.
If you're going on a cross-country road trip, who is your celebrity co-pilot? They can be living or dead.
I keep thinking Matt Damon. I don't know why. I think he's my favorite actor, so
I don't
it's
know,
Matt
Matt
Damon, I
Damon.
guess.
That'd be a good one. No
Yeah.
one's picked him before, so that's a
Oh,
good one.
really?
Yeah, I think no, someone didn't. I was gonna say Ben Affleck, but somebody didn't pick him. They picked another actor like a Matt Damon though. But yeah, that's a good answer there. Another one. Do you make your bed every day?
Yes.
Nice. How about a book everybody needs to read?
Um, Let me give you two. One was it's about a guy who's in Afghanistan. It's called The Last True Story I'll Ever Tell. That was a fabulous book. Um, and then ooh, boy, maybe three. Then there was another book called Lucky, which was really good. They actually made a movie out of a related. Lucky was an autobiography, and then they made a movie out of her fictional account of that.
Okay.
And Mark Wahlberg was in it, and now I can't think of the title of the book, but anyway. And then the third one is this book called Shop Girl, which was written by Steve Martin, also turned into a movie. And I'm not one of those people that hates movie. Like all these movies were fabulous, so either see the movie or read the book or both. They were both, all of them were great.
The book is always. I think my wife read Shop Girl. I feel like that's on our shelf, and I've just never read it, but I feel like I've seen
Oh,
it. So.
it's so good because it's a man. It's Steve Martin, but he wrote the book from the perspective of a woman, which
Totally
you
has to
can
be
think that,
interesting, right? Yeah.
yeah, and it's so dead on. And he did a great job. I was like, wow, that's great. So
All right, that's a new one to add to my list then. So I've not heard of, or I've not read that. So, and I do think it's on the shelf in the living room. So, which one are you taking, highways or back roads?
back rows.
Nice. How about a bucket list place you want to visit?
South Africa.
Nice, that's on my list. Definitely on my
Yeah.
list. I feel like I just want to do the whole continent. Like if I'm going there, I need to just do it all. Like start in the north and go straight south.
Yeah, it would probably take months. Like,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
definitely skipping some of the places, but definitely
Yeah,
hit a
you
few.
might want to like stay around the outside.
Yeah.
I think when you work your way in, maybe I don't know. I'm just ignorant,
So
but I'm just gonna stop. I've never been to Africa, and I would love to go there, either South Africa or Egypt.
Egypt is on the list for sure. So retirement goals for sure for me.
Yeah.
Which one do you like more, football or football?
Oh, football. Honestly, like I see your Ted Lasso. I love Ted Lasso. And yeah, and Jason Sudeikis has like a very famous quote. He was shocked when the show got popular because he was
sure.
like, "It's about two things Americans hate: kindness and soccer." But I love that show, but I can't sit through regular soccer. No,
Just can't do it. You can only watch the Greyhounds there playing. Like
that's it. And he does it a perfect amount. So just when I'm like kind of done with it, they cut to something interesting in the show. So.
All right, last question. Best advice you could give to your younger self?
See, it's like there's a part of me that's like, because I was in the military for a little while, and then there's a part of me that's like, oh, stay in the military, it would have been easier, but I don't think I'd be where I am now if that was true.
Gotcha.
So, maybe like way younger, I would tell my younger self, it gets easier to fight off bullies when you get older and have some power. I think that's probably the number one thing. Like I would tell myself, like in junior high, because when you're that age, like you can't really see any kind of future beyond that day. And so I would probably, tell my junior high school self that it's not going to last forever, and these people are going to peak in high school, so don't worry about it. Like
what they said in the bathroom doesn't matter, right? Like,
yeah.
It's so hard when you're in that moment, but then you look back and you're like, man, look at me and look at them. So
yeah.
Jennifer, this has been a great podcast. I'm so happy we got to do this. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And again, as I always say here at the end, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you check out my friends at Blaze of Glory, Fitness Firefighter. Was it trainlikeafirefighter.com? You know, Shay was on a few episodes before, so I wanted to definitely rep the brand, getting folks out there ready to take the take the job, just kind of like Jennifer's doing now. I want to thank everybody for listening. And for the Size Up by National Fire Radio, this is Pip, and we'll see you next time.
National Fire Radio.